Um, Today we have Harm Aarts in the show. He is now working on open transactions, and as he will be speaking next week in the Old Amsterdam Stock Exchange about open transactions, I asked him if we could do a sneak preview in the show. So, Harm, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, um, please introduce yourself a little bit.
All right. Um, like said before, I'm Harm Aarts. I'm currently working for Monetas. This is the commercial entity behind the open source project Open Transactions. Um, I was a freelancer for a long time, and now I'm full-time dedicated to making open transactions work for the world. That's what I currently do, and hope to be doing for some time now.
Okay. Um, could you, to someone who already knows a little bit about Bitcoin but nothing about open transactions, could you try to explain it a little bit?
Yeah, I'll try my very best at this because it's complicated stuff. One of the first things to mention, I think it's important to note that open transactions doesn't inherently has anything to do with Bitcoin. Bitcoin can be a transport layer to open transactions, if you will, but originally open transactions was actually devised before Bitcoin came into being. The original author, Chris Odam, he started writing open transactions, or at least various parts of it, many years back, before Bitcoin came into vogue. But currently, open transactions and Bitcoin is, like he prefers saying it, is a marriage made in heaven. It's Bitcoin actually provided the functionality open transactions was searching for, was lacking. And these two, so you shouldn't see these two technologies as competitors of any sort. They're very much complementary. I try to explain the open transactions to my friends a lot lately, and most of the time I come up with the comparison between bricks and a house. So imagine Bitcoin being a brick. With Bitcoin, you can do transactions from one person to one other person, and that's it. What Open Transaction is actually trying to do is build on that. Open Transactions is a library which allows you to create all sorts of financial instruments. That can be as broad as making your own anonymous money, Chaumian Cash. Maybe some of you guys have heard of it. Mm-hmm. But it can also be just simple escrow services. It can also be distributed exchanges. It can do all sorts of stuff. Gold issuers can issue gold in the network and trade with the receipts. All these things are just the tip of the iceberg, really, of what open transactions should be able to do. So Bitcoin is the one-to-one transactions, and open transactions blows this up and makes all these financial tools possible.
So could you compare it to, for example, in the Dark Ages? I mean, you could trade money with each other, but at the end of the Dark Ages, in the Golden Century in the Netherlands, we got, for example, the stock exchanges.
Exactly.
And they provide a platform, so it's not, before that you needed two people at the same place to trade between two people, but a stock exchange provides a whole platform and accompanying services for that.
Yeah, I think that would be the description of a subset of what Open Transactions is able to do. Open Transactions, one of the prime concepts of Open Transactions are receipts. So you only hold on to your last receipt, and in that receipt, that's your account basically. So your account doesn't need to be stored centrally. You have your account in your hands, and you can prove your ownership of a particular account with that particular receipt. And with that, you can so you could discard all the previous receipts in that sense. That doesn't mean that that receipt or that account is only valid on a particular notary. A notary is yet another important concept in open transactions. A notary is, we used to call it a transaction service, because that's the engine which is processing all the transactions. But we at some point felt that it didn't do justice to the concept, because a notary it comes far closer to what it really is. A notary is an entity which signs off on certain contracts, and that's what it really is doing. It's a notary is signing stuff.
So it's kind of like what everyday notaries are also doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or at least what they should be doing.
That's what they should be doing. And everyday notaries, of course, store all these documents. Our notaries are sort of stateless in that sense that they don't need to store all these documents. You have the receipt, and that's your final proof.
Mm-hmm. And also one of the big differences between open transactions and Bitcoin is, of course, the fact that Bitcoin wants to be kind of like a currency in itself.
Yeah.
And as far as I understand it, open transactions is purely a medium and not. It's not something itself which you trade.
That's absolutely correct, and that's also what makes open transactions so different from Ethereum or Ripple, for example. I'm sure that question comes up next week. Mm-hmm. Open transaction does not have its own app coin. You can trade with anything. You can issue.
You mean it doesn't have something like Ether or Ripple?
No, it does not. No, you can issue a receipt. So, for example, if you take the canonical gold case, so I have a couple of ounces of gold. I go to an open transaction notary, and I tell the notary I'm going to issue these gold notes. Mm-hmm. That means that I have this gold in storage. I issue these notes, and these notes can then be traded on that particular notary. Mm-hmm. And whenever a customer or somebody interacting with this notary comes to me as the gold issuer, they can redeem their receipt in that sense. Mm-hmm. And with that receipt, that's a given, a proven receipt, a cryptographically signed receipt. So that means that the bearer of that receipt can redeem the gold. Mm-hmm. And actually, in the end, this sounds very much like an exchange, right? Mm-hmm. But in the end, we want to take this one step further. What our ultimate goal would be of open transactions is to remove some of the trust you need to have in a particular notary. So a notary can never forge your receipts. You always need to sign off on the transactions you do. Mm-hmm. That's the triple signed receipt thing. Mm-hmm. But what a notary can do, it can, for example, collude with one of the issuers and thus inflate a particular asset, or and you ultimately need to have a little. You at least have to have some trust in the notary, and that's, I think, and I think everybody in the Bitcoin community feels this trust in a particular entity isn't particularly desirable. I'm sure some of you have lost some coins on Mt. Gox. I know I have, and that's ultimately not a situation you want to be in. So what we are currently building is a voting pool structure, so in which several of these notaries can work together, and all the notaries need to agree on a withdrawal for it to take place. That means that if one of your notaries is fraudulent or leaking money somewhere or cooking the books, the other notaries will figure this out and won't allow that notary to spend or withdraw your money. So ultimately, we want to distribute this risk, not in this very global sense as Bitcoin is doing, but in a loosely federated sense. So you spread the risk across 3, 5, n different notary services, which are working together in a voting pool. And a voting pool that also it's competitive advantage at some point, of course, because if you are trading your assets in a voting pool, you know that notaries can't run away with your money. I would very much prefer that than having my coin at Mt. Gox, where somebody can just basically disappear with your money. So it's always a trade-off between liquidity or freedom of assets and safety. I think Bitcoin in that sense is the like I said, the brick, right? This is where everything comes down to. This is where this is the ultimate safety, but it's not very liquid. And I think with voting pools, you can have this ultra liquid markets where you can trade in the millisecond ranges, where you can have all these elaborate smart contracts, for example, or elaborate financial tools. And I think that's ultimately the goal of open transactions.
But could you that voting pool? Could you somehow compare it to the subject I hear often about the current times is reputation systems?
Yeah, but no. The big difference with reputation systems is that you still ultimately, with a reputation system, I regularly buy stuff on eBay and I always go for the guy which has the most reputation. But still, ultimately, I need to trust that guy. I need to wire him my money and then hope I get the good. He has, of course, an incentive to build reputation, and then at some point just grab all the money and run off. That's possible in that sort of system, and that's voting pools is explicitly not that. So it's not a reputation system. It's comparable in the desired end goal, but it's not the same thing.
But is the voting pool meant to make the system trustless or trustworthy?
No, there in open transactions there is always some form of trust involved, but it's trying to minimize the required trust. It's trying to minimize. It's this balance between the no trust and ultimate security, which is the Bitcoin chain, and the more liquid and slightly more trusty system open transactions is building. So in that sense, they are again complementary.
It sounds a little bit like the way mining works, that as long as the majority of the voters to say it like that. To compare it to the 51% problem, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That as long as the majority of voters, dus notaries and such, are of goodwill, to say it like that.
Yeah.
It works.
I think that. Yeah, I think that's an apt description. Yes.
Okay, and so the liquidity is higher, and to say it like that, the trade-off is that it's not completely trustless, but
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
what Open Transactions tries to do is we often have this discussion at the office that. So currently, I'm not sure what the current transaction cost is of Bitcoin, right? It's 5 cents or so. I don't know, something along those lines. And we want to have. We often speak about financial inclusion. So we want people not only in the well-off countries to participate in this revolution, because I honestly feel that is what's happening. But also all the people not currently in the financial system. So I think half of the world population doesn't have a bank account yet.
Yeah.
That's of course hugely painful for an economy. I mean, it's for you and me, it's trivial to send to wire money. Hell, it's even we're both in the same country. That's a no-brainer. But for somebody, if I want to trade with somebody in Nairobi, for example, that's going to be a whole lot more painful. And then also the transaction fees are still. I think Bitcoin does it a hell lot better than Western Union, for example. But still, it could be taken a step further. So it could be even cheaper. It could be even quicker.
Yeah.
And that's I think that would ultimately be our goal. Have all these people participate in this global economy.
Yeah, I also have to say that the transaction cost was a good argument for a long time, but I mean, it's not as low as as you would like it to be, to say it like that.
Yeah.
Because it's
it's significant.
I don't also know the rate at the moment, but like someone said that 0.0.5 Bitcoin cents can be 3 euro cents at the moment, but if you take the future in mind, that 3 euro cents or the Bitcoin equivalent is in next year it's 3 euro. I mean,
I think in the end the market will settle on some equilibrium. I mean, there are these huge mining pools and they will continue to operate as long as they make a profit. So if a Bitcoin rises in value, I also think the transaction cost will drop. But that's just a market effect. But yeah, I think that's it's just it's going to be something like this, right? A couple of cents. And I think that's too much for some communities around the world to effectively use. It's probably good for some remittance at some times, but not good enough to buy your loaf of bread or your kilo of rice or whatever the hell you're buying on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I have to say that it's the same like with the 51% problem. I mean, everybody is very scared that the 51% problem will not be solved. But I mean, if we as the people or the Bitcoin users accept, for example, that that it isn't completely trustless, but it is 99.999% trustless. I mean, it's still very nice, and I mean, I have already sent transactions which didn't got mined or secured by the network. So, I mean, I have the feeling that people are um, put too much weight in the completely trustlessness of it. I mean, I would like it, but if the trustlessness wouldn't be 100% but 90.999,
Yeah,
behind the comma, it
exactly.
would still be great. And
Yeah,
it
it sure beats the hell out of the system we have now.
yeah. So yeah, you always have to compare it to what we have now, and what we have now is really a disaster. Because I mean, you said that in the Netherlands or in our world it's quite good, but even for example, if you want to open an Amazon account, I don't know if you have ever done it,
Hmm.
but for example, if you want to run elastic computing
Yeah.
cloud, you need a credit card, for
Yeah,
example,
for
and
sure.
not everyone gets a credit card.
Hell no,
And the point
especially
is,
not in the Netherlands. Very,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. In America, you get it with your coffee or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I know stories of people who cannot, who have problems with their startup because they can't get a credit card, and because they can't get a credit card, they cannot put their systems in the cloud, and that's a big problem for them.
Yeah.
So if you could only solve that with the fact that with Bitcoin everybody could start a Bitcoin account,
Mm.
not counting Bitcoins but just an account to receive it, that's already a very large contribution to what we have nowadays.
Yeah, and I
And
actually think that's why Bitcoin is here to stay. It
mhm,
is
yeah,
such an improvement over the
mhm,
current status quo in that sense.
mhm, yeah,
And but but there are also downsides to Bitcoin which need to be addressed, like the transaction fees or the maximum number of transactions being currently possible in the network.
mhm, yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah. I have to say that
definitely
that.
to address that, but if you have some high frequency trades
Mhm,
or whatever, you blow up this network real quick.
mhm. But sorry, I missed you. You said something like that you are trying to address that problem with open transactions, or?
Well, with open transactions, we will be able to because we don't have to pay the miners in that
Mhm,
sense.
yeah.
We will be able to process transactions for fractions of a cent.
Mhm,
So it's going to be well, incredibly cheap to transact
mhm,
on the open transactions network or an open. That's a perhaps another misconception I need to take
mhm,
away. It's not per se a everybody can choose to run their own notary server.
mhm,
And these notary servers don't necessarily talk to each other. They talk to
mhm,
each other when they're in a voting pool. But
mhm,
otherwise, these notaries can be completely separate.
mhm,
Can be completely separate entities. Can transact in one can transact in barrels of gold, and one can transact in I don't know, World of Warcraft gold, whatever, or some combination of that. So it's not per se an open transaction network. It's
mhm,
open. We're building open transactions. You as a person, as an individual, as a corporate entity or whatever, you can run open transactions and transact on that network. For example, we've one particular interesting user, I think, who's using open transactions in his gaming world.
mhm.
So he just
Oh.
incorporated open transactions into his gaming world, and he's just transacting there. Nobody can run away with your money.
Mhm.
If you have the last receipt, you can prove you're the owner of that stuff. Um, so and it doesn't talk to the outside world in that sense. It's just for the users on the network. He's the issuer, he's the notary, and that's fine.
So you could, it's kind of like, uh, so you can have, for example, you can have, there is not something like a one official authority notary voting pool.
No,
There can be all kinds of pools who don't know, or they do know about each other's existence, but they decide not to vote together.
Yeah.
But it's you could somehow compare it to how the Bitcoin blockchain makes decisions, that there isn't some official authority. It's just like the networks could be split, but when they come together, the longest blockchain is right.
No, it's even more separate than that. There is no such thing as a blockchain. There is no such. My receipt. I'm holding a receipt. I received some assets. I received some barrel of oil. I don't know, 10 barrels of oil. I have that receipt. This is the last receipt.
Yeah.
This proves that I'm the owner of these barrels of oil only to that notary, because that's the notary signed off on it, and the issuer signed off on it. But that's that receipt is valid within with that notary or within that voting pool. But it's completely nonsensical to show up with this receipt to another notary. He just doesn't know what to do with it. He's never seen the issuer. He's never seen your signature. It's completely it's useless outside your voting pool or outside without your own notary. And I think that's again why Bitcoin is so interesting. You could, for example, trade your barrels of oil for Bitcoin. Take your Bitcoin, that's on a public chain, then go to another notary, to another voting pool, and purchase, I don't know, some hectares of forest. I'm just making stuff up here. There. So Bitcoin is the transport layer beneath all the voting pools and notaries. Or could be, at least. It could be also something else, right? It could also be
the value transport layer, to say it like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you still need to find a buyer for your barrels of oil who's willing to give you bitcoins for it in your previous network, and you need to find a seller for trees in the new network who is willing to accept your bitcoin. But so you have multiple transactions going on there. But these two or these n notaries or voting pools, they don't share anything. The same principles, but all the content in the network is specific to the network.
But I mean, could it be that that there, in the end, there will exist swarms of voting pools, in the sense that?
Well, that's interesting, right? I think that's I think you're touching on a very interesting subject here, because it could be that one notary is participant of two voting pools.
Yeah.
Maybe there are going to be entities which are going to arbitrage between voting pools. I very much hope so. So yeah, I even think voting pools are definitely not the end game of this this revolution, if you will. Voting pools are just one step up. I mean, our pension funds is for me is just some number in the bank, unfortunately, but that's just some number in the bank. But beneath that, there are lots of different financial instruments which eventually comprise and make up this number. So there are options going on there, stocks, bonds, you name it. All that stuff is under there, but we as a consumer, we don't necessarily see that, and it's a good thing, because I just happen to be interested in that stuff, but I'm pretty sure that 99% of the people out there are not interested in that stuff at all, and I get it. I mean, I'm not interested particularly in sailing boats, but there are a lot of people interested in sailing boats. So I think it's a good thing. We need to make this this eventual system will abstract away from Bitcoin, abstract away from the voting pools, and then at some dumbs it down is not really the good term, but makes it easier for everybody to use. I'd imagine that there are going to be a whole bunch of agents working there. I mentioned the arbitrage. I mentioned the notaries, which are in several voting pools. All that stuff, and God knows what else we could come up with. And Bitcoin is, of course, also not sitting still. We have the side chain. That's actually a very interesting development, I think. So you send money to a particular address, locked up, and freeze elsewhere. Wow, I see a lot of touching points with open transactions right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you see the comparison?
Well, you have I see side chains in Bitcoin. I don't know this stuff for very long, so it might be very wrong. But how I understand it, that you send Bitcoin to a particular address, it's frozen right there, and it's released. It's released in this side chain. Well, this releasing, whatever it's on the other side of the side chain, that side chain has it's more or less the same issues, right? Do you trust the people on the other side? What are they going to do with your money? How do you get the guarantee that you get your money back? And I think that open transactions can play a role in that. I think open transactions has this system of reducing the amount of trust necessary for these things to operate. We've been working with the guys from BTCD to integrate their wallet software into open transactions, and I think this is a natural evolution of that.
You mean BTCD?
BTC
Daemon?
Yeah, that's the conformal guys.
Oh, okay, yeah. And you are going to integrate their software in open transactions, or
well, the other way around? to some extent, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're exploring there, and we're working together. I think we have more or less the same goal.
And I was wondering, with the voting pools, how do you cope with the sock puppet problem? That's
I know what you mean. So there's one.
Yeah, maybe for the listeners, how do you prevent votes between people who don't know each other, or entities who don't know each other, and how do you prevent people pretending to be more voters than just one? So, like on fora, that people all the time make up a new username so that it looks like there are a lot of voters.
Yeah. That's primarily an issue to be solved for the voting pool. And that's where, as a consumer, you should pay attention to. So, for example, if two trustworthy parties, and who we're going to pick, I don't know, two trustworthy parties who are globally trusted, and here's this trust issue again, decide to come together in a voting pool. My confidence as a consumer in that voting pool is going to be significantly higher than a voting pool which has a bunch of random guys from 4chan in it. Because there is this significant risk that they just make up stuff. So this is a governance thing. This is a governance issue. And voting pools should have a clear policy on that. And they should have a clear policy on that. And they should be, there is an incentive for them to be clear about it and be conscious about it, since that's what attracts their customers, right? So if two shady exchanges from Siberia try to come together in a voting pool, or some more well-established parties come together in a voting pool, I think the draw of the established parties is going to be bigger than the draw of the other voting pool. So that's
Yes.
not a solution. That's not an issue Open Transaction tries to solve.
Yeah. So uh, the few probably open transactions will work like that you have you have multiple voting pools. But for example, I've done business with three voting pools the last year, and I had a good experience with two of them. A little bit lesser
Right.
good with the one, but I mean still quite right. And when I want to do business, I decide which voting pool I trust the most.
Right.
And I mean, I can always do business through a new voting pool, but then I know that they are a new to me, and I simply have to take into account that I don't know about their reputation until
Right.
now.
Yeah.
And but does that also mean that I could imagine that voting pools between each other could also start voting? You know, that let's say 5 voting pools can vote a new voting pool, or I mean, they can vote between each other, but they could, if you consider a voting pool itself a node or something.
An entity. Yeah.
Yeah, an entity, uh, then they could also vote on that level about each other, for example.
Yeah, I think that would be possible. That might. I'm trying to see what the incentive or what the perceived value would be.
Mm-hmm.
But let's presume there is one. I think there's nothing standing in the way for that. They just basically they're going to spin up a new notary, a new open transaction server, proclaim it's theirs. This notary is acting in behalf of this voting pool and participate with this notary in yet another voting pool. Yeah, I don't see any issues with that.
Yeah, I mean, I compare it a little bit with how many markets often work. That in the beginning you have a lot of new entities, and that you often see with many markets that the longer a market. Sorry?
They consolidate.
Yeah, that in the end you often see that there becomes something like an oligopoly, or sometimes a monopoly, like with Microsoft, for example. And
yes.
So I mean I could imagine that if you don't have an overruling authority, that in the end there will be different voting pools, not unlimited, but some major voting pools who somehow compete with each other.
I think there's actually a competition within a voting pool.
Okay.
And why do I say that? And I think that's actually pivotal to this. I like the voting pool best if the participants hate each other.
Okay.
Why is that? Because each member of the voting pool continuously audits the others. And if the others are doing something wrong, if the others are found fraudulent or slow or whatever, if I can catch them on something, then I can take economic advantage of that. So as a consumer, you're not per se dealing with the voting pool. You're dealing with a member in a voting pool, and that member for its own incentive, being part of the voting pool makes it more trustworthy in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still dealing with Bitstamp, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Bitstamp being a participant in this voting pool of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And these other 4 are continuously looking on the fingers of Bitstamp, seeing if he's doing something wrong. So I want these other 4. I want them to be direct competitors of Bitstamp.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm sure that they're going to do their job correctly.
Yeah, you mean you actually want them to hate each other because
Yes,
that's the incentive to find errors in the
exactly.
network.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering, how do you prevent, for example, how do you prevent a closed network? I mean, how do you prevent new members of a voting pool to be voted out of the voting pool, to say it like that? For example, there are some voting pools or some notaries. I start a new one. How do you prevent those different notaries to for economic reasons vote me out to say that I'm a bad guy or whatever, without having real evidence for that?
Let me think. So you're a participant of this voting pool of
Mm-hmm.
3. Let's
Yeah.
make it the simplest case.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Or N, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other members want you out.
Yeah.
And
Because they don't want competitors.
but they allowed you into the voting pool at some point. But maybe
Okay.
you've grown too big. You can't.
Yeah.
You need to be allowed into a voting pool.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not
So
something which is.
Yeah, but so these voting pools, they are. Um, I mean, they aren't fluid. You have at some point you ask to become a member of it, and I
Yeah.
mean it's not like depending on the network connectivity
No.
that there are different voting pools. Like for example, in
No.
Bitcoin.
Voting pools are very much traditional entities.
Mhm.
So these entities have probably have a governance
Mhm.
policy. Maybe they're even registered somewhere as a fund. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is not a technological thing. This is technology makes it possible, but it's not it's not a emergent property.
Mhm. Okay. Um, we've now. I think we've now covered it already quite a bit. The
Yes,
open
I hope so.
transactions thing. I mean, there remain all kinds of questions, but
And for me as well.
first we should let it rest now. For now, I think.
Right.
Is there anything you want to say?
Well, I just glanced at my notes, and I think I've said most of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure there are lots of questions. People can email me or contact me anywhere.
Mhm.
I'm guessing you put an email out there or something. That's fine. I'm very much interested in all the questions coming up,
Mhm.
and I'm looking forward to them actually.
Okay. I thank you for this interview, and I call the listeners to join the Ethereum and Bitcoin dinner next Tuesday in Amsterdam. It's the dinner is at the Hofje van Wijs. It's the first place where it's the first place with a permanent Bitcoin ATM.
Nice.
It's at the Zeedijk, and it's 3 minutes walking from Amsterdam Central Station. We start at 5:30, and around 7 we will move to the Old Amsterdam Stock Exchange. There we will have the talks. Also, this one by Harm Aarts about open transactions. So please join us then, and yeah, there we will also have the Bitcoin roadshow with different companies showing their Bitcoin solutions. And by the way, for to be clear, I mean, if there are companies with open transaction solutions, they're also welcome, of course, or Ethereum solutions. And
Oh yeah.
so yeah, there will also be some announcements to be made at the dinner, but later about that more.
I'll be there.
Yeah, okay. So join us for the dinner and the roadshow and the talks. Harm, thank you for giving this interview and answering our questions about open transactions.
Thank you for having me. Happy to do
Okay.
it.
See you all next week.
All right.
And
See you guys.
you. Bye.
Cheers.